how did you get started in this industry?
I had been with a pretty abusive partner who was stealing money from me. And I mean, he was a pretty well-known tattoo artist. We were living like the rock and roll lifestyle. So that was kind of glamorous, but then he fell down into addiction. This was like when opioids were at the peak of addiction. And so in order for me to keep the lights on, I was a teacher as well. Looking online, I was like, I've heard that webcamming could be lucrative. And it was, thank goodness. And actually it was a lot more liberating and totally awesome and exactly what I was looking for. But again, the motivation was not as cool as I was hoping it to be. So
No, but it's like beautiful because you were in a hard situation and you were able to find something that provided a solution.
Totally. Considering it was an abusive relationship that I was in, I was terrified of doing anything that, I couldn't keep excessively private. So yeah, getting into the webcam industry was just it was liberating. I actually originally applied for Jasmin, but I was not very tech savvy at this point. Now I'm over here like coding and like I'm all kinds of on the backside of internet stuff at this point. But at the time I could not get my images to fit the formatting, because this was back when they were really, really strict about the formatting. And it was just, I was like, I can't, I was like gonna upend my table and fling my laptop across the room. So I just could not get the tech part to work. So I ended up going elsewhere. But then eventually, like, I just burnt out on the other sites. And I was like, Jasmin has such a glamorous look and I know I can fit into this. And so when the pandemic hit, it's when I got back into webcam work, because I had done it for a couple of years and then I stopped, and I actually went to live in Scotland again. That's where I got my master's degree. So I went back to live in Scotland, and that's where I was teaching, and I just, was doing other stuff. And then the pandemic hit and I got caught in the US. I was supposed to be traveling to China. Actually, March of 2020, I was supposed to go to China to open up my my teaching offices for my business and then go back to Scotland to live again. But I got caught here in the US in the meantime. And so I was stuck here in the States. And so I was like, well, shoot, what am I going to do? Because I can't do my business. I can't travel to China. And we didn't know what in 2020, how long we were going to be. The point is that I ended up attempting again, because I was like, I'm a lot more tech savvy. I think I can handle Jasmin at this point. And then that's when they had amped up their support in 2020, because obviously a lot of people were caught at home. And so I ended up interfacing with one of the managers almost immediately, because he absolutely loved my look. He saw my pictures though, and he was like, these aren't formatted right, but I will help you. And I was like, oh, thank you. And so him and I actually ended up being like really good friends. And then I got into the like hourly wage that you guys were offering. And it was just, it was amazing. And then I ended up recruiting a bunch of other gals, and me and this said manager that I'm mentioning, that I won't mention by name, but he ended up helping me start a studio actually for a minute. So even though I wasn't for studios, I started a studio during the pandemic. So.
Wow, that's an incredible story.
Thank you. Yeah. And there was a girl that she was in her 40s and she was terrified because she was also a tattoo artist, but because of the pandemic, she couldn't go into work. And she was like, her and I were friends through another thing. And she was telling me, she's like, I'm in my 40s. I can't get on cam. Nobody wants to see that. And I was like, girl, stop it. First of all, you're gorgeous. Don't you worry. And like literally in the first couple of weeks, she made a lot of money, like several thousands of dollars in the first couple of weeks. And she was like, you literally just saved my life. And so through the whole summer while they were closed, she was, working under my studio. And yeah, but it was really, really good. And also, again, not to keep using the word empowering and liberating and whatever, but it was really helpful during the pandemic to, gain that control again. And then also, because it was my first time using Jasmin, it was the clientele was just so much better. It was amazing. Like I didn't have those like scary trolls that, sometimes come into this line of work in general. It was just amazing. Like I met some really cool people. I have people that I still talk to this day because of that. So
I love hearing stories like this. I really do. Those words that you used, empowering and liberating, those are incredible words. You mentioned that Jasmine has um, a different clientele than what you had experienced before.
They're more serious. Like, you know, that if you're interacting with these folks, it's not just a bunch of games, and, you know, like they don't harass you the same way that other sites, you know, the freemium type sites and whatever, like there's a respect, for lack of a better word, that happens. You know, the percentage of people that I spoke to in my chat, even when it wasn't like a private chat, were just so much more like, I knew that was going to go somewhere. Whereas, like, you know, I could talk to hundreds, I could have even thousands of people in my room and other chat sites, and maybe 1 to 10% of those people were actually going to, you know, translate as either, you know, just like a serious, like, good banter, or you know, an actual paying customer. And so it was exhausting. Whereas, you know, like, if I logged in for 2 hours on live Jasmin, I knew I was going to make some money. I knew I was going to meet, you know, cool people. I knew that it was going to go somewhere. You know, some of these other sites, I mean, seriously, I'd have to be logged in for like 8 hours before I could make the same amount of money, or at the very least make the same amount of like ongoing clientele. And so it was just exhausting. Whereas this was just, I don't know, it was more efficient for sure.
I love that. More efficient members. That's important. That's important for the models.
Yeah, you just knew that these people were going to be, they were going to take you seriously. And so it was a lot easier to convert regular customers into my room.
You seem like a little bit of an entrepreneur. I'm curious if some of maybe even the money you made from working on Jasmin or owning a studio has helped propel new endeavors for you.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it was literally 6 months after the pandemic started. So, and I mean, I started on Jasmin maybe like week 2 of the pandemic. I was like, we're not leaving our houses, folks. This ain't going to be a 14-day sort of situation. We're going to be here for a while. So I started really fast. I got right on it. I was like, this is the time to strike, my friends. And now I had other things that also added to this, but I will tell you that doing that definitely helped me buy my first house. So that catapulted me. I know it was because it was 6 months after that I bought my first house, and me and my partner did it, but we had no idea. We thought we were moving to Scotland. We thought we were going to Europe. So when we got stuck, I was like, no, we're not going to sit here and waste time. You know, we're going to put some of this money that I'm making, and, you know, because we don't know if that's going to continue on. Again, it was so uncertain 2 years ago. So we ended up, we just got on, and the interest rates were amazing, and they're not anymore, obviously. So we got our first house. I, you know, put a lot of the money that I had been saving and some stuff that he had as well. And then that turned into, actually, the reason why I bought my second house is because we've turned the second house into an Airbnb. So I've got an Airbnb business, which is why we're going to be able to buy our third house. So we got into real estate because of this.
I love how smart you played it. That's what I love the most about listening to you, is that you saw an opportunity. You know, during the time of the pandemic, most people were like freaking out. What are we going to do? Complaining. You were like, we're going to be inside. How do I make money inside? You went to the place where you knew you'd be able to do that easily. Jasmin, use some of that money to get a house, which has now turned into you being able to get, like you said, you're in the real estate business.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, because of how crazy the housing market has been over the last 2 years, like the equity that we like gained like in 2 years. I mean, it's insane. You know, so, but like, don't get me wrong. Like, I was very uncertain, and I had lost my other business during the pandemic. So there was plenty of times that I spent, you know, crying under my desk with a glass of wine, but I also did. You're right. I saw an opportunity, and again, Jasmin, the amount of support that I got in all of my wacky endeavors, because, sometimes this is the fate of the entrepreneur. Oftentimes the mind is just whirring constantly. And some of these ideas are profound and some of them are entirely insane. So it was really nice to have a team with Mitch and the other managers that I ended up crossing paths with. It was really nice to have a team that supported all of my zany ideas through Jasmin. So it was really, really nice to have that support.
I think support is such a strong word. You felt really supported in what you were trying to do.
Yes. And immediately too, it wasn't like I had to have a bunch of, I wasn't in the top 10 models or anything. Like, I just started out and I didn't even have my profile picture formatted right. And immediately out the gate, I had support.
I love that so much. So to be able to have a home that's yours and investment properties is huge.
Absolutely.
I'm curious what other freedoms have come about from your time in the industry and with Jasmin.
Yeah, so I'm also a writer. That's actually why I originally went to Scotland. Now I've been for multiple reasons because Scotland's just amazing. But I'm a writer, and that was that's what I always wanted to do. I have some things published, through magazines, and I've got a book published as well. And then, but it, even as a published writer, it's just not lucrative work. So I got to go back to my passion of writing because of the industry, as well as, so funny. You'd think that there's a lot of people that think that this would stigmatize, be a blight on their resume, for instance. And, frankly, I have opened up so many doors with, investment relationships with people that, are not at all familiar with this industry, but they are, very respectful and, absolutely, have not only respectful, but they're impressed even by, going down that road and being part of this industry. And so it opened up some doors. I, ended up having a writing partnership with a crypto company. I'm not excessively into crypto, but I was able to, because they're on the fringes, they're in the Wild West of the world as well. So they're like, hey, girl, you think outside the box, come and write for us. So I helped write for a podcast that's, crypto podcast. And just basically what it opened up was this arena where I could, kind of get other people to take their masks off and interface with people in this place where people would have imagined it, and I too would have imagined it was a stigmatized zone, but it was actually this destigmatizing that I can do by saying, hey, by the way, this is what I've done, and this is the reality of it. And it's amazing to watch people interface with that, and the authenticity and actually sincerity that comes from people is really amazing.
Oh my goodness, that's powerful. Because what I feel like I just heard you say is, being in this industry actually helped open up certain doors for you, as opposed to shut them.
Yep.
I'm really curious about that. Do you, because you're right, there is still, to some degree, or in some areas, stigma attached with the industry. Do you feel like that's shifting?
Absolutely. Now, I do still think that there are, fuddy-duddies out there, and there definitely is predatory practices within the industry. And so there, everybody needs to go in this with their eyes open. I'm not trying to be super nonchalant about this, but I think part of it is also just because, again, I mentioned the word hubris earlier. I think that because I do wear a lot of my endeavors with confidence, that helped. But I also do think that the world is changing too. So I think that there's a combination of, me having some, what's the word I'm looking for? I have some confidence and extra experience, I suppose. I didn't go in naive, and therefore I'm able to translate to other people that I meet about my experiences in a very real, authentic way. And then the world around us changing to, I dabble in Twitch and other things. And it's funny and not just funny, it's amazing really to see how many of these influencers are so positive of this industry and positive and supportive of, and so watching this, you know, in the next generation, everybody is very, very, not everybody, but more people than the last generations are supportive of this industry. And that's, it definitely is, I think, a combination of the two, of me being confident and just wearing it on my sleeve, and the world around me getting more supportive of it.
I completely agree. And I actually think that what you're doing is the secret ingredient to the world becoming more supportive of it, because you are confident about what you're doing. You're proud about what you're doing, and you know that you're not doing anything wrong. And so I think that energy is sent out, and other people are like, no, you're not. And in fact, girl, we want to bring you onto our team, and can you, come right for us in crypto? And that's
Totally.
really interesting and very cool to hear that you're right. Crypto is kind of in the Wild West, like outskirts, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And this industry can be considered in the outskirts to some degree still, absolutely. And so I like that there's this joining together in the Wild West. That is
Yes.
really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, and but even I also work right now, sort of a basic 9 to 5, mostly because of health benefits and such. But and it's easy enough work, but it's funny because it's very, very traditional work. I work in like telecom, I analyze power lines, et cetera, for fiber optics, but which sounds way more technical than it actually is. But the point is, I just said it in my interview with them, and they were like, heck yeah, well, that shows that you got initiative, girl, come on board.
I was just thinking, I could see how someone saying, yeah, I was camming, or I'm a cam model as well. If I were hiring, that immediately would tell me, oh my God, she has interpersonal skills. Come up, like she knows how to be warm. She knows how to deal with people. That is probably one of the #1 skills, honestly, on this planet. Do you know how to deal with people or not? Because if you don't, no one's going to get anywhere. But if you know how to deal with people and be warm with them and have some type of persuasion over them, that's very valuable. And if you've been camming, to me, that would say you might know how to do that.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, actually, the other skill that, if one is so inclined, and this is going to be a funny story, I suppose, of a door that opened for me. There's a pretty well-known director that saw one of my streams and was like, girl, you're like a talk show host. And I was like, well, thank you. And they were like, my casting director thought that I was crazy for looking at cam models, but we've been starting to look at cam models for some of our roles. And so because they were like, because these girls can hustle, and they absolutely have to be acting and on the, on point all the time. So I was like, that checks out for me. I know what I have to do on cam. You know what I mean? I know what kind of work I'm doing here. So, but anyway, so he was basically saying that, that they were doing an audition, and that they wanted me to do said audition. I did the audition. I got the call back. This was also when I was going to LA. So I was like, but I've never wanted to be an actress. That was actually not my thing. But bizarrely, just kind of at the same time that you and I started interfacing this week, or last week, or 2 weeks ago, or however many weeks ago, it was within the last month, he called me again, and he was like, hey, we've got another role and I just can't get you out of my head. Would you want to, audition for this? And I was like, he's like, I know that but you got to audition for the other directors. Like, you're the girl if you want to do this. And I was like, gosh, that's insane. Like, anyway, so I might consider it. Again, acting was never the thing that I wanted to do. So that's why I haven't been, and so I almost feel I feel sort of crappy about it, where I'm like, I know there are people out there hustling their butts off trying to get, opportunities like this. And I'm just like, I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, if that is something that you want to do, I mean, cam work, wow, does that sharpen your skills as far as acting and interfacing with people?
What's interesting? I feel like if you are in the business of engaging an audience, creating content, no matter where that is, whether it's camming, whether it's hosting, whether it's traditional reporting, journalism, it doesn't matter. The skill set is almost identical. Do you know how to engage someone? You know what I mean? Do you know how to be warm and personable? And if you've been camming, oh yeah, those skills are sharpened. That's exactly what I would think if I were hiring for something.
Yep.
Your
Absolutely.
skills there are sharpened. But what I like too about what you said is it really does show how the industry is expanding and how directors are now like, you know what? I need a girl who really knows how to take control, and I can probably find someone who's camming. And they're now looking on Jasmin to find, talent.
Totally. And
Or
now
like,
he got a lot of flack a couple of years ago when he apparently, because he started a couple of years ago, he found me last year, but he got a lot of flack. And there still are people in, the main veins of Hollywood and, Screen Actors Guild and et cetera, that are not so happy with that, but it's happening whether we like it or not. So, and he's just one of those pioneers, and he's not going to be the only director that does this. So
and look what's happening when you have Bella Thorne and Cardi B on OnlyFans. It's a very similar dynamic
yes.
of this paid subscription content that is some very flirty or sexual in its nature.
Yep.
So Hollywood during the pandemic actually came to this industry.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I love that. That's incredible. And I think it really is a bright light that's starting to show. And it is starting to show that, hey, people are starting to become more open-minded here.
Totally. Absolutely.
As a woman, when you are dealing with so many different people and the fantasies and sexuality of so many different people, did you learn anything about your own sexuality?
I mean, yes, what it helped with my personal sexuality is that I broke down barriers for me to not take every single thing quite as seriously. So you can get into the sandbox and have fun and say, nope, not into that. Never mind, but try things and be less, stodgy about the whole thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I like that a lot. The millennial generation, I feel like one of the things that we kind of got known for is our interest in ourselves. We were the ones that were like selfies all the time, but that was really, I read the study on it. It's a reflection of us wanting to know exactly. Like we really made the selfies and taking pictures of ourselves and posting them a thing. And a lot of people are like, it's narcissism. But I actually read a study that was like, no, actually, we were the first generation to be like, wait, who are we? Like, what
Yes.
do we like? And what am I like? And we're trying to study ourselves almost.
Yes, absolutely. And in that self-reflection and in that study, it does kind of help like separate some of this like unnecessary seriousness about everything. Like again, I can't say that there was like a kink that I found through this that I'm like aha, but like I say, what I did find is like it's okay to relax and laugh about things and reflect and be like, this is not nearly as, there are very serious things about sexuality and consent and all that sort of stuff. Those are serious topics, but there are some things that we just take way too seriously about ourselves, and that kind of did help me relax into just sexuality in general.
That's important. That's huge.
Yeah. People have their idea about what this is. And then there were times where, I had a lot of folks that were overseas in Afghanistan that it didn't always end up in, in sexy times. It was actually a lot of them were just, they wanted to sit around and drink whiskey and talk to me like, I'm their friend. And then they did become friends eventually. Like I got to know a lot of people. And again, there was a handful of soldiers overseas. And then there were, there were a lot of married men that didn't want to actually cheat on their wives. And so they wanted to come and talk about their relationship. Like I would always tell them, like, obviously I'm not a therapist. I can't, really diagnose what's happening in your relationship. But I also commend you for not just going out and, I'm not saying that there aren't people that would have found that even to be egregious to speak with me. But I was like, frankly, I think this is a better way for you to sort yourself out. And again, a lot of times it was just conversation like, hey, I just need somebody to talk to me in a way that is going to be so vulnerable and so intimate that I can't ask my friends. And it would be absolutely cheating if I went to the bar and tried to find some girl, randomly to talk to about this, or then follow through with some of my desires and whatever. And so there was a lot of times where the service that I was providing was, a friendly, intimate ear.
Absolutely. If you could give advice to a girl who is curious about becoming a streamer, she's looking into Jasmin, she's checked it out a few times, what advice would you give her?
Gosh, I really wish that I had have realized earlier how much support there is out there, how many people have already invented this wheel and then reinvented it and then reinvented it. That, like, if I had realized how much less stigma there really is here, gosh, I could have saved myself a lot of grief. And what I'm doing in most endeavors now, but certainly the ones that feel like they're stigmatized, I'm almost like, I almost have this policy now where I like force myself to get to know a community before I try to, again, reinvent the wheel. So what I would say is, reach out to, there are tons of resources and gals out there, promoting themselves, especially as webcam models, and through Jasmin, there are forums that you can interface with people, and support. And obviously there's, a whole network that, was given to me on Jasmin immediately through like WhatsApp and such. I would say, don't be afraid or ashamed, really, if that's the fear of reaching out to the collective community about, questions, because again, we all had to start somewhere, and there's a lot of really wonderful people that will just get you started the right way instead of having to, be thrown to the wolves, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I like even your story where it's like you didn't even know really how to format your pictures to the specific needs of the Jasmin site. And the account manager that saw you pop up was like, let me help you. I'll do it for you, basically. I mean,
Totally.
that in and of itself is just such an incredible story of how much, you're right, support is here. And I do have to say that is actually a theme that you're right. Now that you say it, I have noticed that. People in the industry, because there's like this understanding that there's stigma around the industry, it's like, no, we have to help each other.
Yes.
And
And
there is
if you're new, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like, if you're on the outside looking in, you might think because it's stigmatized, it's every man for himself. And I'm not saying that there are some people that get a little weird, especially when I got deeper into the development side of things. There are people that definitely gatekeep, but there are way more people that don't.
I love to end the interviews by asking, what's something you're the most grateful for in your life right now?
Ooh, gosh. I mean, kind of to come back full circle about, just the fact that I was able to, I mean, housing is such a a fundamental thing, and being able to, have not only one but two places that are helping support me and house me and house all of my creative endeavors and house my two little rescue doggies. It was a dream of mine since I was like a teenager. I was like, oh gosh, I've arrived if I own my own house. So I'm very, very grateful that I have a spot to call my own and fill it with things that I love, including my little doggies.
That's a huge one. And I commend you for not only having one house, but I think almost three now. And I think especially as a woman, to have the security of a consistent, constant home, and the stability that brings into your life, that is something to be so grateful for and to be so proud of, that you've been able to work and provide that for yourself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know it feels like a fantasy, but yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an incredible interview.
Awesome. I'm glad. Yeah, no, this was a fun time. I love it.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad.